Welcome back. And joining me now is New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman. Tom, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Great to be here, Kristen. Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here for some perspective about where things stand right now. I did have the opportunity to talk to President Trump on the phone yesterday for about a half hour, and I asked him to characterize the status of the war. He told me Iran is, quote, completely defeated militarily. How would you characterize where things stand in Iran right now?
Well, what strikes me about your conversation with the president, Kristen, is everyone wants to declare we won or we lost, and we're 2 weeks and a day into this, and this is a hugely complicated problem. What I would say, what we're seeing right now is the power of the strong versus the power of the weak. So on the one hand, the United States has the power to inflict terrible damage to Iran's military and infrastructure. At the same time, Iran has the power of the weak, that with just one drone or one cruise missile, we can cut off the Straits of Hormuz, 20% of the world's oil and natural gas. There are 600 ships bottled up there right now. So the balance of power between the power of the strong and the power of the weak is what I'm watching. And I think that's how that levels out is going to be, I think, the determinant.
It was interesting because the president said that one of the things that surprised him most was the fact that Iran is, in fact, taking aim at its Arab neighbors. And the president indicating that that was something that they were not anticipating. How have those attacks by Iran complicated the dynamic of this overall conflict? It's become a regional conflict.
Well, one of the strategies the Iranians have employed against America now for 40 years in various different conflicts is what I call the strategy of out crazy. We will out crazy you, okay? The reason the Israelis have probably done better than any other country against Iran is they will not be out crazy. And so that's always been an Iranian strategy. I did not expect them to attack their Arab Gulf neighbors, but you can understand why. They thought that's where they're most vulnerable. The American bases there are vulnerable, and they hope to create a lobby of Arab Gulf states to pressure the president to end the war. It will have long-term implications, though, for Iran's relations with those states. Remember, Iranians, a lot of them bank their money in those Gulf states. A lot of them treat them as a sort of a valve to go release a lot of their energy. So the long-term implications of that are going to be profound.
Well, and the implications of the leadership, obviously one of the biggest questions that we're watching right now is this war about regime change. Based on what Iranian state TV is saying, the leader right now is the son of the supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. And we know that he was injured. He put out a supposed statement that was in writing. President Trump telling me he's heard he might be dead. It was notable that the statement went out, wasn't on camera. We didn't hear the voice of this new supreme leader. What do you make of that? And is regime change possible, Tom?
Well, the way I look at this is basically there's in these Middle East wars, Kristen, there's the morning after and there's the morning after the morning after. Now, I think a lot of our strategy and what I've been advocating is kind of take the win now. The military defeat, what you've done, it set Iran back. And I would be offering them a ceasefire right now. Why? Okay? Because the morning after any ceasefire, the Iranians will come out and say, we defeated the big Satan and the little Satan. The morning after, millions of Iranians are going to be saying to the leadership, come here. That's my house there on the ground. That's my factory. That's my school. What the hell were you thinking? Okay, what are you going to do about that? That's when real politics will begin inside Iran. Politics will only happen inside Iran when we stop the bombing. And that politics is the only thing that will change the character of the regime. I think that's all we're going to see in the short run. But that politics could also create fissures within the regime, because this regime is not going to break from the bottom up. It's going to break from the top down. But it'll only happen when politics can happen. We already saw when Iran's president came out and basically apologized to the Arab Gulf states for bombing them. Right away, he got slapped down by the Revolutionary Guards. That tells you the kind of fissures that are there. But politics only happens the morning after the morning after.
You know, the president told me to this point about a potential ceasefire, Iran wants to make a deal, and I don't want to make it because the terms aren't good enough yet. Now, I know you are actually highly skeptical of the deal that the Obama administration struck. Is a good deal possible? What would that even look like, Tom, under these
I'm actually not
circumstances?
skeptical of the Obama administration deal. I thought that was a reasonable deal at the time. Let's remember, when President
It wasn't
Obama,
an ideal deal,
right,
but
it wasn't perfect, but it was
Yeah.
the best you can get at the time. Remember, when President Obama left office, Iran was a year away from a bomb. Iran now is weeks away from a bomb. And that's something President Trump will have to take responsibility for and answer for one day. Now, maybe we're able to actually eliminate, as a result of this war, Iran's fissile material, over 400 kilograms that it's stored up, and its ability to enrich more. I don't know. It's still way too early for this. But it's only going to happen, I think, in stages, Kristen. The first stage would be, ideally, to me, Islamic Republic 2.0. Where you get some more reformers in there, some balance. You maybe get a deal with Trump. God willing, that would be great. But the idea that we're going to go from this to the Iranian revolution of the people running the country like Les Miserables, I find that highly skeptical.
Well, the other conflict, of course, that we are watching is the war in Ukraine. I thought it was very notable that when I was asking President Trump about Russia, about the decision to lift sanctions, he pivoted to the war in Ukraine and made this claim: Putin wants to make a deal. Zelensky is far more difficult to deal with. You heard both Secretary Wright and Senator Schiff weigh in on that. What do you make of that response by the president?
Well, there's always been something bizarre that none of us have understood, or I certainly haven't understood, about the president's relationship to Putin. The fact that he's always ready to put maximum leverage on Zelensky and little leverage on Putin. And that's a real problem, because we have a chance for a deal in Ukraine, I would say, Kristen. But there's a difference between a dirty deal and a filthy deal. And I don't know which President Trump wants. Does he want a dirty deal or a filthy deal? A dirty deal says Russia gets to keep what it has, but there'll be an American-backed peacekeeping force on the ground in Ukraine to prevent Russia from coming back, and Ukraine gets to be in the EU. That's a dirty deal. A filthy deal says there will be no secure guarantees for Ukraine, and it may not even be in the EU. That's a filthy deal. And if President Trump is responsible for a filthy deal in Ukraine, shame on him.
Finally, Tom, I want to ask you about your column that you have. It is out this morning. It is called How Minnesota Beat Trump. You spent time in Minnesota, which is your home state, and I want to read a little bit of what you had to say. You say, the world looks more like Minnesota today than ever before. And so the great governing challenge in Minnesota, to my mind, is a microcosm of the great governing challenge facing America today. Can we make out of many one? Our great national project since our founding, when the many is now so much more diverse, even more than it was just 10 years ago. Of course, this coming against the backdrop of the crisis with ICE. What did you learn in Minnesota? What were your takeaways?
It was actually the most remarkable act of civic courage by men and women not in uniform than I've ever seen in this country. Moms donating breast milk, dads emptying ATMs to help people who lost their jobs, people driving one another all over the place, strangers, to get their kids to school because their parents were afraid to go out. But for me, Kristen, it's part of what I call America First, my version. And my version of America First is not America alone and America selfish, which is Trump's version. My version of America First is that we be the first country in the world that demonstrates how to make out of many one when the many is now so radically diverse. Okay? And why is that important? Because all the problems we face as a country today, as a global community, are all planetary in scale. Managing AI, managing nuclear weapons, managing migration, managing pandemics. And so we could either we do that together, or we're going to have a really bad century. You know, my friend, teacher Doug Seidman likes to say, interdependence is no longer our choice. It's our condition. Okay, we're going to rise together, baby, or we're going to fall together, baby. But baby, whatever we're doing it together.
All right, well, on that very powerful note, we will leave this conversation. Tom Friedman, thank you so very much.
Appreciate it.
We really appreciate it. It is a fantastic read.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.